Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a Pokemon that I have never showcased before in the entire history of my YouTube channel, and that Pokemon is Floette. Now, these battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Mark Pogo, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, Mark is using his rank 1 Floette in the Evolution Cup with a very unique strategy. He's using the fact that Floette has very strong Zero Shield matchups to generate a shield advantage, and then with shield advantage, using either Fletchinder or Primeape to try and sweep his opponents in the endgame. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's see what Floette can do in the Evolution Cup. Well, it's off to a pretty good start in the first match, leading Floette into Primeape. Floette's moveset appears to be Vine Whip, Petal Blizzard, and Dazzling Gleam, so unfortunately Floette has absolutely no bait move to speak of, but it does appear to be very bulky. Rage Fist does absolutely nothing. Opponent safe switches into Crocalor, and Crocalor is going to be swiftly answered with Fletchinder. Fletchinder no shields the crunch, pays a pretty heavy price, but Fly is going to hit for some pretty significant damage in return. If Crocalor wants switch advantage, it's going to have to give up a shield, but this team is all about generating shield advantage. So honestly, switch advantage doesn't matter a lot here. He can just no-shield Fletchinder, take the shield advantage, and then get Primeape on the field. Primeape can now look to overfarm massively. Crocalor throws on alignment. Primeape more than happy to shield back, and then look to overfarm to the moon. Opponent's got to pivot out. They realize they can't get the farm down. Back in comes the Primeape, and he's not baiting. He's going straight for the close combat, gonna guarantee the shield or the knockout. Opponent calls the bait, and they pay a very heavy price. The Crocalor is still around, and the Primeape is at -2 defense, and Incinerate would do quite a lot of damage, but instead it's going to be a Charge Bug in the back. Very nice deferral of the Volt Switch, and back in comes Floette. Floette gets the Fire Off Dazzling Gleam. That's very nice damage. If Charge Bug is running the standard moveset of this meta, then they're actually completely walled here, as in this meta the standard is X Scissor plus Crunch. Back in comes the Crocalor, 2 Vine Whips and the Dazzling Gleam. Is this going to be enough? Dazzling Gleam is resisted. Crocalor falls, and back in comes the Charge Bug. Charge Bug is going to get a pretty significant farm down, but there's just so much energy stored on the Primeape. The opponent has to have the back-to-back here. If they don't have it, this game is over. They end up no-shielding the first. They just get karate chopped down, and that is a good game. We move to game number 2, picking up a very bad lead this time, Floette into Crocalor. Immediate save switch into Fletchinder. Opponent has no response. They just stay in with the Crocalor, and this allows Fletchinder to make the Fly. Fly is going to guarantee big damage and a pretty significant desync at the switch clocks. They overfarm quite a bit. We know from last game, Crunch will do a lot of damage, but will not take the knockout, so Fletchinder will be able to no-shield. In comes Dusclops, and if Dusclops tries to farm down, Fletchinder should be able to make the back-to-back flies. Fly number 1 is going to connect. Oh, an aggressive pivot out, and back in comes Floette. Floette is very, very bulky, so taking Shadow Punches here shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. I spoke too soon. It's a Poltergeist. Oh no, and just like that, Floette loses almost its entire health bar. Floette fires off the Dazzling Gleam. Shield comes out from the Dusclops. Dusclops trying to farm down, and they will get the farm. In comes Primeape. Instant charge attack comes out from the Dusclops, and Mark's going to be no-shielding. He's calling that it's not the Poltergeist, and it is just going to be the Ice Punch, and that's a very nice catch of Ice Punch number 2. Primeape is going to have to try and accomplish the impossible here, but man, that Poltergeist landing was absolutely catastrophic. And oh my goodness, this Dusclops just will not get KO'd. Ice Punch after Ice Punch after Ice Punch. Finally, Primeape is going to put a stop to Dusclops as it fires off the Rage Fist. Rage Fist will connect. Dusclops will get KO'd. Back in comes the Crocalor, and Crocalor will get knocked out by the Rage Fist unless they put up the shield. Rage Fist is going to connect. Crocalor will fall. Oh no, it's Chansey in the back. Chansey's Zen Headbutts are adding up, but this is a double boosted close combat Primeape. Surely, this is going to do monstrous damage. Double boosted close combat nearly one-shots a Chansey. That is the most damage I have ever seen Chansey take from one singular charge attack. The Rage Fist bait is diabolical and lets Primeape outpace. Perfect energy management. Primeape KOs Chansey, and that's going to be a win. We move to game number 3. This time Floette going to be greeted on the lead with a Charge Bug. If Charge Bug isn't running Discharge, then Charge Bug is going to be in for a very, very tough game here. And in this meta, usually there's not really a reason to run Discharge. So Floette is going to strike first, connecting with the Dazzling Gleam. The Volt Switches do add up, but this energy is going to be very inefficiently used if there's no Discharge. And there's not. It's going to be X Scissor and Crunch. And X Scissor is just simply not a problem for Floette. So Floette will always be able to generate either Switch Advantage or Shield Advantage, and that that appears to be the goal of the team. There's 2 sweepers in the back, so if Floette can just be bulky and then win the zeros or get a shield advantage, then it's probably time for Primeape to run rampant. Primeape will hit the field. They've already shown they don't have discharge, so Primeape has nothing to fear here. Primeape with an O-Shield, Charjabug fires off the X-Scissor, and there's a pivot out as in comes Dusclops. Dusclops really not going to appreciate the Rage Fist, and Primeape being up energy is going to help quite a bit. This is the Shadow Dusclops as well, an alignment throw from the opponent, and if there's a Pokemon you do not want to give free energy to in this meta, it is Primeape. Primeape now gets to double up on Rage Fist. If this Rage Fist takes the knockout, the opponent is in a tremendous amount of danger. Rage Fist connects, it does take the KO, and now this is a double boosted Primeape already having a Rage Fist banked. Are they just going to bring back in the Charjabug? No, they're going to bring in Primeape. Double boosted close combat is guaranteed to get the final protect shield, but the moment they give up that final shield, their fate is sealed as in comes Fletchinder, and Fletchinder just simply does not have to care about the first Rage Fist, so even though they have a big energy head start, it's not really going to amount to anything. And the moment they try and switch in Charjabug, they're never going to make a move because Fletchinder already has energy loaded. And there's the switch, in comes Charjabug, that Volt Switch is never going to land. Heat Wave is going to be the end of Charjabug. Back in comes the Primeape, they need to make it to the Rage Fist, but they're just simply never gonna get there. Fletchinder gets the full Peck farm down and takes the win. We've got the battle of fairy types in the next match. Togetic into Floette. Now, Floette obviously is at a pretty big disadvantage here in terms of the fact that Vine Whip is going to be resisted, but Floette is also very, very bulky, and it looks like it can pick up the 2 with KO here as it fires off the Dazzling Gleam. It's all going to come down to the moveset on Togetic. Togetic is opting for Heat Wave, but it looks like Heat Wave will not be able to pick up the 2-hit knockout. Floette should be able to hang on, and if Floette can make a Dazzling Gleam, then Floette will be able to generate that shield advantage. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Floette barely clinging to life, making the Dazzling Gleam, getting the shield advantage, and now in comes Fletchinder. Fletchinder going to be answered with a Marshtomp. Marshtomp has access to Surf, and this is going to hit for a ton of damage. Fletchinder hasn't seemed like the bulkiest Pokemon so far, but that fly connecting is incredible. That is very, very nice damage. Fletchinder is going to no-shield. Marshtomp lands the Surf, but it doesn't take the knockout. That is massive. Fletchinder actually able to survive the mud shots and make it to the fly. Going to go for a full 0 bubble on the fly. It's still going to be taking the knockout, but Fletchinder just really did not want to surrender any kind of farm. Back in comes the Togetic. Togetic did store quite a bit of energy here. Are they on Heat Wave Dazzling Gleam? No, they're on Heat Wave Psyshock. Psyshock will give them ever so slightly faster pacing, 5-4 versus the straight 5 for Heat Wave. And unfortunately, Primeape forced to give up all shields, and in the back is going to be Shadow Piloswine. No baits here, going straight for the close combat. Close combat is going to connect, and Piloswine gets KO'd. Back in comes the Togetic. These Fairy Winds honestly not doing a lot of damage onto the -2 Primeape. Primeape gets the shield with the Rage Fist. Primeape needs the catch and gets it! Getting the catch onto the 1 HP Floette. Incredible! And that is going to seal it. Back in comes Primeape. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We move to the next game, leading Floette into Shadow Charjabug. I do think the Shadow Charjabug is a very cool pick for this meta. Shadow Volt Switches are hitting for insane damage onto Floette, so even though the energy should be walled here, Floette is actually going to be under quite a bit of pressure. Floette is going to be no shielding. Oh, this is actually a Discharge Charjabug. Right after I said earlier that no one runs Discharge in this meta, apparently we have found the one Discharge Charjabug. Charjabug is going to be knocking out Floette. Unfortunately, no switch advantage or shield advantage has been secured, but Fletchinder does get a pretty nice farm down. Opponent sends in a Shadow Golbat, and Golbat would absolutely destroy the Primeape, so it's very critical for Fletchinder to try and neutralize the Golbat here. Even just these pecks are doing some pretty helpful chip damage onto the Golbat, but Golbat presumably can just spam out. I was going to say Poison Fangs, but this is actually a Legacy Golbat running Air Cutter. Air Cutter, a very cool choice for Golbat. Fletchinder goes for fly number 2 and is able to get the final shield. Honestly, with all the peck damage, Golbat is getting quite low. Fletchinder is going to put up the final shield. Fletchinder should now have the fly, and Golbat will be eliminated. Primeape's going to have to win the 1 vs 1 in the back. Can Primeape close combat something? It's going to be Doublade in the back. I don't know if Doublade is going to have enough damage here to beat the Primeape. Primeape can boost up with the Rage Fist. Even if Doublade is able to land the Gyro Ball, Gyro Ball is a pretty mediocre move. I just don't think it's knocking out the Primeape. Doublade goes for the Sacred Sword. That's just not going to cut it. Oh, he was reaching for the Bad Manners close combat, but sadly the opponent didn't let it happen, and they will resign the match. We move to the next game, picking up what I assume should be a pretty decent lead, Floette into Celio. The opponent doesn't even build up to a Surf here, which is very surprising. Maybe they're on return with the Celio. They are purified. Seeing a purified Celio does break my heart, though, knowing how strong the Shadow Celio is. Floette lands the Petal Blizzard, and I guess we'll never find out as Celio gets one shot. In comes Shadow Golbat, and this could be a problem. Fletchinder is going to be the immediate counter response, but Fletchinder is not going to have a great matchup here. Fletchinder able to no-shield the Poison Fang, but Golbat's wing attacks are adding up quite significantly. If Fletchinder can make a second fly, that would be absolutely critical. Fletchinder getting very, very low, almost at the fly, but not before Golbat fires off another Poison Fang. Fletchinder will put up the shield, go for the Heat Wave to cover for a catch onto a flying resist, but no catch comes through. Instead, it's just going to be Golbat double shielding, and it's going to be Primeape versus the world. Primeape immediately met with a charge attack from this Golbat. Primeape going to be forced to give up the final shield. Opponent could try and go for a catch here, and they do as they bring in Crocalor. Oh my goodness. These Incinerates are doing so much damage on a Primeape. Primeape full sense the close combat. That connects. Primeape gets the farm down and pivots out into Floette. Back in comes the Golbat. Golbat will be able to fire off super effective damage here with the Poison Fang. Will it even KO? It looks like it will, but Primeape should have the energy loaded, and that's going to be a win. I don't know why for a second there I assumed Floette was going to survive. We've seen Floette survive a lot of charge attacks, but that is a Shadow Poison Fang. Definitely going to be knocking out. But the good news is, all's well that ends well. The game ends in a win. We move to the next match, Floette leading into Zweilous, and despite the fact that Floette is a fairy type, this is a matchup where Zweilous probably has a very dominant two-shield matchup, because Zweilous can chip away with the Body Slam, and oh my goodness, they get the Dazzling Gleam catch onto the Crocalor. That is absolutely devastating. Crocalor is going to be answered with Fletchinder. But man, that lost energy from Floette, courtesy of that catch on a Crocalor, is just absolutely devastating. Fly will get the shield from the Crocalor, and Crocalor ends up throwing on alignment. That free peck is going to be very helpful to Fletchinder, as Fletchinder should be able to comfortably outpace now. Fletchinder make it to fly number 2, and now the opponent, they're going to have to double down and double shield if they want this energy. They decide to let it go. Crocalor gets KO'd, and back in comes Zweilous. Will Zweilous get the farm down? They throw energy. It would have been very close. I think they may have been able to get the farm down, but they got too worried. They throw the energy, and that is a very big swing of momentum, because now back in comes Floette, and Floette has to deal with significantly less residual energy. They can fire off a Body Slam. Floette is just simply not going to care, and Floette's able to make the Dazzling Gleam. No catch comes out this time. They're going to have to put up the shield or lose the Zweilous. They let the Zweilous go, and it's a Primeape in the back, and they were just so absurdly weak to Fairy. Floette is going to be no shielding as Rage Fist will take the knockout, but this should just be a completely winning endgame for Primeape, as Primeape can just shield everything, double up on close combats, and there's just no path forward for the opponent. Even as they boost up these Rage Fists more and more and more, there's just nothing they can possibly do. Mark goes for the double shield. I believe he did lock into a Rage Fist here, but either way, it's not going to matter. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Floette into Shadow Celio. This time the Celio is Shadow, and this time it's actually building up to Surf as it's supposed to. Surf connects, that's some pretty big damage onto Floette, and Floette is going to be able to win the zeros, but we can see the more shields that are in play, the worse Floette's matchups are going to be because of its very poor pacing. Now this is where the opponent, not knowing that Floette is poor pacing, will actually pay off because they throw a Body Slam that they didn't have to throw. They presumably assumed that Floette had a cheaper move, but Floette does not. Floette would have been fully farmed down. Now in comes Primeape, able to win charge attack priority, hoping the Rage Fist will secure the knockout, and it does. So now there's a +1 Primeape. In comes a Shadow Dusclops, but Dusclops is going to have a very rough time going up against an already boosted Primeape. Rage Fist connects, that's already over half their HP gone, and they can fire off the Shadow Punch. Health call to make here coming up. Will Dusclops throw an alignment, or will they still go for good timing? Primeape makes the read, throwing on 3, but the opponent actually ends up going for good timing and gets an entire sneak. Final Protect Shield of the match comes out for the opponent. He's going to be using his Final Protect Shield as well, and it all comes down to what does the opponent have in the back. Rage Fist will secure the knockout. Primeape is now going to be at +4 attack. What is going to be that final Pokemon in the back? It's a Lairon, and look at the Karate Chops go. This poor Lairon gets absolutely deleted. He's 0 bubbles, the +4 close combat. That probably would have KO'd every Lairon in existence, and that's going to be a win. Oh no, it looks like Lairon is back for revenge in the next match, as it's going to be Floette versus Lairon. I assume Lairon has a dominant matchup here. These Metal Sounds are shredding, and Rock Tomb will hit for some pretty significant damage. An aggressive pivot, as in comes Primeape, going to be answered with Dusclops, but Dusclops is not a particularly convincing answer to a Primeape safe switch. Typically, the most common answer to a Primeape safe switch you would see would be a Charge-a-Bug, as Charge-a-Bug can very comfortably survive a Rage Fist, and at the very least has super effective fast move pressure. Whereas for Dusclops, Dusclops can actually get in a lot of trouble if it's down a lot of energy. That Rage Fist did do some pretty significant damage. Dusclops will throw on alignment, and Primeape will put up the shield. Primeape gonna look to try and make a play for switch advantage here. Primeape gonna get the full karate chop down, and they actually do have Charjabug in the back as their final Pokemon. Primeape firing off the boost in close combat. Charjabug will put up the shield, and this is gonna be a bit of a tricky endgame. In comes Fletchinder, their opponent pivots out, they bring in the Lairon. The Lairon has access to double super effective damage with Rock Tomb. A catch may be needed. Rock Tomb is gonna debuff. In comes Floette, and Floette will fire off this Petal Blizzard. This will be neutral damage out of the Lairon. Lairon no shields, and that damage is critical. Back in comes the Charjabug. Charjabug gets the farm down, and it all comes down to this. Can Fletchinder survive the Volt Switches plus the Crunch? Crunch not going to do a ton of damage, but we know Volt Switch hits incredibly hard. There's a lot of energy stored on Fletchinder. Fletchinder going to be firing off the Heat Wave. Heat Wave is going to be no shielded. Charjabug now in trouble. Charjabug gets fully farmed down, and that somehow is going to end in a win. Lairon should basically just be an auto loss lead for this team, but he's able to find a way, dance around matchups, and he's able to secure the win. All in all, these were some very fun battles, so many thanks to Mark for the battle submission. I think overall, the Evolution Cup ended up turning into a pretty decent meta. This is going to be the last Evolution Cup video for this rotation, but I do think it ended up being a little bit better than it has been in the past, where, at least in previous iterations of it, we haven't had it for quite some time. It used to be the Vigoroth show, where Vigoroth was everywhere. We had people running, I believe it was Feint Attack Dusclops, just to have a better matchup into Vigoroth. So it's definitely a very different looking meta to what we've seen in the past, but honestly, I ended up really liking this iteration of the meta. Now, it goes without saying, this was a very anti-meta team. Floette is a Pokemon that I have never seen ever in the Go Battle League before, period. And in large part, that's due to the fact that Floette is unfortunately cursed to have a very expensive pool of charge attacks. Looking at Floette's entire learn set in Pokemon Go, unfortunately, it learns Petal Blizzard, Dazzling Gleam, and Psychic. None of these charge attacks are even remotely close to anything that could be considered a bait move. So it would be cool if at some move update in the future, Floette actually got access to a cheaper charge attack. It would allow it to hopefully compete in a very different way to its final stage evolution, which is Florges, which we know is the debuff machine. But even just getting something where it gave Floette just a little bit of extra play, so that way in limited metas like these, it could shine more than it already did. But I do want to give props to Mark because it is a pretty creative strategy to take a Pokemon that has absolutely irredeemably terrible 2-shield matchup. Like, if you sim Floette into the Evolution Cup meta in the 2s, it is an actual horror show because it just gets outpaced by everything. It has no pacing to speak of, but taking a Pokemon that probably has like a 20% win rate in the 2s and still finding a way to get wins with it. And that's recognizing the fact that this Pokemon has really good zeros. So I'm just going to try and play zeros most of the time and try and set up the close combat Primeape because that's a Pokemon that really benefits from a shield advantage. So it's very creative team building overall and just a very cool showcase. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.